Whoa.
Brought to you by the
Whoa.
letter umlaut. That was genius.
That was fantastic.
That was genius.
Oh, cool. Hey,
Oh my
everybody.
God. Hey.
Hey, party
Hey,
people.
hello.
Joe. Hey, John. Hey,
John.
everybody. Hey, Simon.
Peanut Gallery. Let's see. We
Gallery.
got a Chris. We got a Steven. We got a DS. We got a Bonzology. We got a Simon. And we have Mr. Spliffy. Spillify?
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 Spillify.
Is that kind of like
more sense?
it's like, is that like
Spillify.
Shopify and then you get drunk and you spill it?
Or Spotify.
I think Spliffy made more sense to me. That was just,
I like that. That's very rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Mr. Spliffy.
Speaking of Spillify.
Cheers.
Oh wow. Okay.
Cheers, you guys.
So, what is that, John? Is that some form of Gatorade?
It's a Costco version of vitamin water, which I'm sure is actually probably killing me in some measure. There's
Yeah,
like
it's
46 things I can't pronounce down
yeah,
here.
it looks radioactive from here.
Yeah.
Something's got
But
to
it's
kill
good.
you. And then Steve, what are you drinking?
We had a gentleman that follows the show named Steve Voth, and he blew into town a week or so ago to see a Dodgers game or two and just go see AC/DC at the Rose Bowl. And he just kind of like waltzes into the factory and go, "Hey, I know Steve's busy. I don't want to bother anybody. I just wanted to come out and see the place, and I wanted to drop this off." So he dropped this off.
What the hell?
Awesome.
I mean, yeah. And that's fantastic. But I mean, I guess he's didn't want to stop by my shop. I guess.
Yeah. So
Steve,
this is this really nice.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
This is this version of Torin. This is the version of the Ocho that's the single estate thing, because it's a bunch of different estates and they blend and things. So each different estate has their own specialty, which we've had Ocho on the show before, but I haven't seen this one, and it's looks like it's a Reposado, and so this is my first time cracking it open officially on the show, and it's nice.
Now wait a minute, you're just no, that's not drinking it neat.
No, this is up. This is up.
Yeah,
it's a margarita up.
Yeah. Interesting. Have you had it neat?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. The night is young.
Matthew the Stones to give it a shot. I think it'd be good.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Right along with maybe you can blend it with John's vitamin water.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
how's you guys this weekend so far?
Well, before we get into that, let's introduce John, because he's the man of the hour.
We have as a special guest John Thompson of Badcat Amplifiers, and welcome, John.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you could make it. John and I met, 2016 or something at NAMM the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
Spoke for about 15 minutes or half an hour at the end of the show, and we walked away. And I thought, that was a pleasant gentleman. I'd like to have a conversation with him one time. And fast forward 10 years, 9. And so as a result of recent events, I reached out to him, and then we had a little conversation, and I went, okay, you got to come on the show. That's all there is to it. You're obviously a blood brother, because we just hit it off right off the bat. And then we had a 3-way with you and me and Joe in advance of the show, and Joe felt the same way. It was just like, man.
Yeah, John and I go way back to April 22nd of 2025.
I think it was Thursday, way back Thursday.
It was Thursday? Oh,
yeah.
Geez. Okay, 24th.
I remember meeting you, Steve. My first thought when I saw you was like, holy shit, that's Steve Fryette. I got to say hi.
Yeah, well, it was the end of the show, so we were all sitting around the table looking like we'd all been run over by a car about 5 times.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do remember that much.
I thank you for having me on. I mean, I'm obviously Sunday. I'm kind of chilling. I was cleaning my garage earlier today, and I thought I'd stay out here and enjoy the solitude and quiet.
Well, my weekend has been pretty full. Last night I went out to dinner with 3 old friends. This Kirk Helly, who was a guitar player that he was like one of my I was his first repair tech guy. He came to Valley Arts when he was 13 and
Wow.
brought his dad was buying him a Marshall. He was learning how to play guitar and his dad was buying him a used Marshall and they brought it in and dad was like, I just wanted you to check it out. I heard you guys have a good reputation. I want you to check it out and see if it needs anything before we go buy it. And I checked it out and I said, it just needs this and this, maybe $75 worth of repairs or something. And he goes, and I think he's an accountant or an engineer or something. Anyway, so he went right back to the seller and went, it needs this and this and this, and it'll cost $75 to fix it. So will you take whatever your price was less 75? And the guy said, sure. And then he brought it to me. And then a year later, he brought it back to get a gain mod in it, which I think he still has the amp and it still has the original mod in it. And then he started getting out and playing out, and he ended up touring with Steve Jones's band for a couple of years.
Oh wow!
Did you say gay? Did you say gay mod?
Yeah. That's exactly what I said.
It pulls the gain out of it a little bit, makes it a little brighter.
Oh, I thought you said gay awesome. Mod.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought you said gay mod for a second. I didn't know there was a gay mod in an amp. But so can I ask you? So
was it either a gay mod or a gain mod? It was one of the two.
Tell me about Valley Arts. Well, that was a cool store, wasn't it? Down in L.A., like way back in the day.
Yeah. Well, let me just wrap up this little last night's episode. It was me and Kirk and Bruce Nelson from Nelson Guitars and Dean DeLeo's Guitar Tech and Kyle Stevens from Bang Tango. So we all go back 30 years together and we just had a blast. We closed the restaurant. We were there for 4.5 hours or something. That could have been a show in and of itself. It was a riot. We had the best time. So that was part of my weekend. And then today I had a dead battery in one of the cars, so I had to go deal with that. And then I had to come home and remember how to get this rig to work again, because after 2 weeks, I'm like, I need some kind of injection into my temples to try to remember how everything works.
Up to 5 minutes before we went on, I'm like, I can't even get audio. There was a mess. Like, okay. But
what's funny though is we've been resolving those problems before we actually go live in the last. I shouldn't.
Steve and I have had so many stupid things happen on the show through the years that we don't really get rattled anymore when it's like T-minus 30 seconds and we have no signal.
And now that we don't get rattled anymore, they don't happen anymore. And I think that's to the detriment of the show, honestly.
Yeah, this show sucks now. There's no technical difficulties.
There's no catastrophe in the wings.
Well, I was clicking on a link at the last minute, and it said I had to download Google Chrome. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh, wow. Forcing you to use Chrome? Interesting.
Hey,
well, last night.
Look what just showed up.
What is that?
Oh, neat. That's neat.
Cup?
It's a thing that might go with this.
That could work. I think it'll hold it.
You know, I might have to bust out a little something fun.
Yeah.
Too. Then it's all my stuff's right over there.
So how about you, John?
Well, I watched I went to dinner with my wife. I watched a lot of the NFL draft this weekend. I'm a big Rams fan, and I was just kind of wondering who was going to get picked first, the new Pope or Shadur Sanders. I wasn't sure which one. But I guess he finally went in the 5th round.
Yeah, did you hear about that whole deal where I think it was the son of a Falcons assistant coach prank called him?
Yeah. Oh my, that's so cold. I mean, oh my God.
It's awful.
I mean, he kind of had it coming maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the worst.
Okay, I'm not enough of a sports dweeb to know what you guys are talking about. But that's all right.
Man. Well, you know what I did last night is I went to the Bellwether and I saw Obituary.
What's with you and all the Cookie Monster bands lately?
I don't
Seems
know.
To be a
That's
trend.
Just what's happened? Well, one of my buddies fiance's is what does she do exactly? She's part of a management company. And so for this particular show, we just got in for free. And I mean, it was fun. I mean, Obituary isn't my, my first
Top of the
choice
list
of stuff that I, but it was really cool to see him, It was
Well,
a
you
fun
went to
show.
what, Meshuggah last time?
Oh yeah, I saw Meshuggah a couple weeks ago, and then I saw Imperial Triumphant and Mayhem at the Belasco. Do you guys know who Mayhem is?
I know the name. Yeah.
So Mayhem, if people don't know anything about them, you should just Google them. There was a film made about them actually called Lords of Chaos. It's the craziest lore of any sort of rock band ever. They're like ground zero of the Norwegian black metal early 90s stuff.
Okay.
And in short, the second singer of the band, he committed suicide.
I was waiting for this.
The
Good career
guitar
move.
player took pictures of it. It became the cover of a bootleg album, like the scene. And then
a snuff pick on an album cover.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And then that guitar player was murdered by the bass player 2 years later.
Holy.
Wow.
Like excellent citizens. So the band now is the original drummer and the bass player from that era with some other guys. But yeah, Lou, brutal. And I'm like,
I'm not sure if I joined it. Would you join that band? I wouldn't. It's like your chance of getting killed are like what, 2 and 4?
Well, I saw an interview with the guitar player once, one of the guitar players, and he said that we really don't communicate in this band because nobody likes each other.
It's like Journey.
It's like,
Only they don't kill each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Journey. Only people
Journey
who
without
like
the
instead of
homicide,
die.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the best part about the Mayhem show, well, I mean, it was actually a really cool show, but I went, all right, I'm an old dude, but it's Mayhem. I'm going to get up close. So I go down on, get on the floor. I get up close to the stage. The first
Sounds like a bad idea.
Such a bad idea. I'm like, fuck this. Like, I got to get out of here. But then I turn around and I'm going, oh no, to get to the back, I have to go through the pit.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I
I
get
did a
into the
pit.
pit.
I did a pit a couple of months ago at a Hellman show.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it
I got
fun.
royally thrown to the ground, and as soon as I hit the ground, 2 people grabbed me and put me back up on my feet,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
smashed into me, and I'm like, going, "This is all right. I'm into this."
My buddy last night stage dove during the terror set, who were opening up for Obituary. But my dumb ass, I went to the Mayhem show. I had my aviators on my hoodie, and when
Not
I
for
walked
long.
out of the venue at the end of the night, I was like, oh, I lost them in the pit. So there's $120 down the toilet.
My perception is blown. I cannot think of Steve as being in a pit. I think of him as being like in the owner's box with a smoking jacket and a pipe,
No.
sipping a cocktail.
No, I was
Backstage pass kind of hanging on there.
Wait, John,
I was doing the mosh when that was a new thing.
Do you know Steve's punk past?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. You need to be filled in on this.
Okay, yeah. Catch me out.
I've got footage of me at the Olympic Auditorium stage diving into a crowd of 10,000 people.
Kind of those places where the floors are sticky, those kind of places.
Yeah, it was a big venue.
Yeah.
It was the old wrestling place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and had the Esquire, and there was a guy standing next to me on the stage, and he was like air guitaring, like, yeah, brother, and he seemed like a fun-loving guy. So I decided I was going to try a stage dive and see how long I would stay elevated above the crowd.
That's a great idea.
I just looked at him and I went, here, and I handed him the Esquire, and off I went into the audience, and you could just see me go like out with the tide and then come back. And I made it back to the stage, and I've got it's all on YouTube someplace. There's a video of it, and as I'm getting pulled back on the stage, I realized the band hasn't missed a beat, and I'm hearing my guitar part, and I look up, and the guy I handed the guitar to is
Just
playing my part, and he's
fantastic.
he's killing it.
That's how you lost your space in the band.
No, he had
And then I started an amp company.
he had
The
his
end.
pants halfway down. I mean, it was pretty pornographic, but I was dying. I was just like, oh, it couldn't have gotten any better than this. It was great.
You guys are making me feel like I was in Peter, Paul, and Mary or something.
Yeah, you probably were.
Well, you were doing cool stuff like going to law school.
Yeah. But I mean, I played in bands too a lot. You know, I was in an original band in the early '90s, and we did the usual, Coach House and Whiskey and Roxy and places like that. That's just the first time I had a Carmen X100 because I couldn't afford a Marshall at the time, right? Like 91. And I was at the sound check at the Roxy, and I heard this carang E minor, and I knew that every piece of gear I had was gone. And I turned around and looked, and it was a matchless. And I went, "Oh my God, that is the sound I've been hearing in my head since I started playing this damn thing."
Interesting.
That's where it all started. That's what got me into Badcat and Matchless and all. It just I ended up buying a Vox after that. Strange enough, but I had to get that. I had to get that sound.
Yeah, or at least get it out of your system, right?
Yeah, I knew I wasn't a Marshall guy at that moment. I was like, okay, I'm not a Marshall guy anymore. This is new. I got to do this.
Wow. Huh.
That was the
That's
Roxy.
how it
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, that's why I got into this mess. That's why I'm not hitting golf balls off my boat right now, because because I decided to get into the music business and amp business.
So now you're collecting what do we call it? Jurassic technologically Jurassic bicycles that are hanging from the ceiling behind you.
Yeah. No motors. You'll know, no motors.
All right. So,
of course.
Were you in law school at this point when you're?
No, it was in 94, 95, 96.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just before that.
All right.
But I mean, I've been playing music since I was 10. You know, I got a guitar at a garage sale in like 1974 for $5 or something, and then just started playing guitar, and then picked up the needle, tried to get Boys Are Back in Town, and realized that I don't know what these chords are. What the hell is this?
Oh.
And then rode my Schwinn Stingray down to Moody Music in Orange County, California, and bought the Kiss Destroyer songbook, and then got to work.
The book.
Got to work.
And I wonder how much of that book was wrong.
All of it was wrong. I mean, the hell, Paul. I'm looking at his hands. He's not doing this. What the hell is? It's a G. What? Like, no. There were no riffs.
That's my interpretation of chords, is to just butcher them any way possible. And every band I played with, somebody would go, "It sounds like a C sharp, but what the fuck are you doing with your hand?" I'm like, hey, I'm making it sound like a C sharp. That's good enough, isn't it?
Yeah. When all else fails, don't play the third. Right? Just play the fifth. You'll be fine.
Then
I was hanging out with Mike Soldano one time, and he was showing me his guitar that he uses to test amps with, and he was playing. I said, "So what do you play when you're testing the amps?" He said, "Oh, mostly bar chords like this," and he grabs the neck like this, and he's only playing his index finger and his pinky finger.
Wow.
Up the neck. Talk about I don't need any of those other digits.
I guess you could do that.
That's a power chord. Huh.
So what do you use, Steve? What do you use to test amps?
I have a Hamer Special.
Oh, I love Hamers.
Yeah, that I've had forever. I've had it for a long time. I got it from Hamer. I had a little deal going with the guys at Hamer over some advertising stuff that ended up being like, I'll help you out, and we were basically running an ad, and the tagline that we were using for the ad, they had started putting together a campaign around the same tagline. And the president of the company at the time was Frank Untermeyer, and we were buddies. So he calls me up and very nicely says, "We have a little problem." And we've made 10,000 t-shirts and 1,000 jean jackets that have this tagline on it. And he says, well, first, let me ask you, how long have you been using this tagline? And I said, since last November. And he goes, oh, we have a new problem. And I said, okay, let me guess. You were going to call me up and tell me that I got a cease and desist on the tagline because you already are have it underway. And now you just found out that I beat you to first base. And now you're waiting for me to tell you, forget it, And he goes, yeah, pretty much. And I said, the jacket sounds cool that you described. I want one of those. And I love that little Hamer special, that little flat maple top thing. I love that guitar. Just give me dealer cost on it when you do another run, and I'll stop using that tagline. Honestly, we were gonna be done with it in about 60 days anyway. So we just won't renew the next insertion, and knock yourself out. And he's like, awesome. And the Hamer arrived the next day.
Whoa.
That's pretty cool.
And the invoice said, and the tagline was toned to the bone. How imaginative.
Oh.
And so the invoice just said a 4 tone to the bone on it, and that was it. He gave me the guitar.
Okay, so
and the jacket.
I had this idea to call this amp a classic Cat 50. This is back, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, something like that. We ran an ad in Guitar Player magazine back when we used to do that kind of thing, right? And so I'm just out goofing around doing something, and also my cell phone rings. I don't look. I go, okay, yeah, John, this is Hartley Peavy. And I thought, okay, this is Hartley Peavy's not calling my cell phone. This is one of my asshole buddies that's just messing with me right now. So I'm like, oh, hello, Hartley. How the hell are you? And he goes, well, Ron Beinstock gave me your phone number. And I'm like, oh, crap. This is actually Hartley Peavy on my phone. I go, whoops. I go, okay, sorry. I didn't think it was you. And he said, well, just as a gentlemanly thing, I thought I'd call you. And we kind of own the name Classic and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what? There are worse guys to have you owe favor to, right? So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll call it something else by tomorrow. Don't worry about it. But I noticed on the new Viper when I was at Guitar Center, there's a little thing at the end that says Badcat. What is that? Oh, well, we were trying to emulate, and I go, I'm just kidding. I'm messing with you, man. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
The truth of the matter is, you could have just said, "Go kick rocks." Classic Cat is not classic. That's a different phrase.
Yeah, but it's like it didn't matter. It was just like such a silly. Ended up calling it the Fat Cat anyway. Later, eventually.
Yeah. He called me too when we put classic on the front of our chrome fronted EL34 4-space power amp, the VH
nice.
Classic. We put classic on that, and I got the call.
You got the same call?
Yeah, and the whole mano a mano, let's just work this out and blah blah blah. And I said, actually fine. And I think we were just doing the last run of those chrome panel amps, and then we changed it to the 2100 after that. We were going to change it anyway because we couldn't ditch the polished chrome front panel and call it the same model. It would have been like, what'd you get rid of the chrome for? The chrome was just polished chrome was just such a pain. So
yeah,
I was like, fine. But later I discovered that there was an ulterior motive behind that, because I had invented the depth control and was using it on the 2150 power amp 2 years before he filed a patent on it.
Oh.
And Eddie's guitar tech borrowed one of our power amps and took it up to the 5150 studio to listen to it, and Eddie liked that depth control. Right. So they incorporated it into the 5150 amp design and then filed a patent on it.
Ouch.
And so I don't have any problem telling everybody that that we did it before Peavy, and probably the reason that he called me about Classic was because for subterfuge, so that he could by the time he had filed the patent application for the depth control, which they called resonance, the time they filed that was about the time that he sent the cease, and he actually followed up the phone call with a letter about the Classic logo, and the Classic had the depth control on it too. So if he knew about Classic, he knew about the depth control. He knew that they were filing for a patent in bad faith and didn't say a word about it. So I don't hold back when I talk about that. I talk about it whenever the subject comes up. I tell the same story because it is the same story. So I have.
What I say we do. I say we get on a plane right now, the three of us, and go kick his ass. I'll go with you.
I was ready to have a like a nice little sort of face-to-face chat with him at NAMM, and I saw him walking towards me on one of the aisles. He was walking straight towards me, and I went, "Hartley, Steve Fryette," and he took a 90-degree down another aisle and just disappeared.
Oh, no way.
2 feet away from me.
Steve, NAMM 2026, Fryette and Thompson beat up Hartley Peavy in the hallway. This is what we do. I'm in, baby. Let's go get him.
Hey, you know what? Since then, we've come up with so many more things that it's just, to me, it's laughable. Now the patent is expired. Oh, here's the other clue that I love to talk about. Called me and sent me a letter on Classic. Did not send a cease and desist on the patented resonant control to us or any other company that was using it. Now, if
he knew that. He knew. Yeah. Those kind of things the lawyers tell him. There's prior art. I mean, I don't know how he would. Did he get? Was the patent granted?
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of wild.
Well, I mean, there are ways. There's a thing called sort of a statute of limitations. You actually have to prove that you had the idea 6 years before the patent was filed. So by that standard, I probably would have lost a patent complaint, a patent challenge. I probably would have lost it, but it would have been fun doing it. I just decided it wasn't worth the money, and I thought it was hilarious. If I ever did decide to challenge it, I would be able to say, okay, Soldano, Hughes and Kettner, Egnator,
right? Friedman, blah, 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 blah. On and on.
I would have had a lot of fun with that. And all those people I talked to them, every single one of those guys were ready to. In fact, the guy that rented the power amp to Eddie's Guitar Tech to use at 5150 for the development of the 5150. That guy was ready to sign an affidavit saying that he brought that amp to the studio and they saw that and decided to use it. He was ready to do that. So I actually have a copy of it sitting in a desk drawer someplace. That's just fun little trivia. Man. Over with.
No, he's dead. We're gonna get him, man. Steve, you're not
onward and upward.
Done with this bastard.
So John,
I'll hold him down.
You hold him down. How do you go from standing around that sound check at the Roxy, hearing that Matchless and playing, to getting involved with building?
Well,
what's that journey all about?
Well, when I tell people this, they kind of laugh at me, but it's sort of true. Of course, it's sort of true. In a sense, I bought Badcat on Craigslist. I was doing my usual, like scouring, Craigslist and looking for stuff, and I buy this and I buy that and I sell this, like we all do, right? One day I see this ad that says Badcat spring cleaning sale. And so I get in my car, having just got back from the NAMM show, and where I spent 4 days trying everything, right? And so I drove out to James's place over in Anaheim, and I went in there and I said to him, I said, "Hey, what does the guy got to do to get a freaking Badcat Cub?" And he's like, "Well, just give me your credit card." So I handed it over, and I sort of heard stories about the sort of the boutique builder kind of thing where you put the deposit down and chase them around for 6 months and that kind of stuff. So I started becoming a regular down there, and I collected amps and I worked on them a little bit. I mean, I know just enough to really screw things up bad to have to give it to Steve to fix it, right? And then so I would go down there and talk to him, and then one day he just said, "Yeah, I think I'm getting out of this business." And I kind of looked around and I saw like, the stacks of mail on the floor, and I saw an empty pallet of speakers, and it looked a little spare around the warehouse. So I thought, I wonder, like, well, how much do you want for it? And so he started talking about it, and then I guess he was in a deal at that moment with Hanser, right? The Hanser company with Bill Xavier was sort of working that deal with those guys at the time, and honestly, I don't know. There's something inside me just said it would kind of suck to see a great at that time, like a great American brand like that, right? Just sort of devolve into what I looked up Hanser and what they did. And they just sort of take like American companies that are sort of on their ass a little bit, and then they build them in China at 100 miles an hour and pump them into Guitar Centers and Sweetwaters, and I thought that would kind of suck. And so I just said, well, what if I bought it? And so I was the general manager of an electronic company over in Irvine at the time. We did magnetics and things called inductors Inc. And at the time, I told the owner, for a while I kind of lived beneath my means. I had a nice big fat nest egg, um, and then I thought, well, I'm gonna give this a shot. So I started calling James, going down there a lot, and the owner of the company that I worked for. He said, "Well, if you're that passionate about it, let's do it together." So I spent the next 3 months negotiating with James Heydrich, which, I mean, it would be easier to mud wrestle a badger. I mean, it was like nailing Jello to a wall. It was the most ridiculous experience of my life was negotiating with James. He's gone now, so I'm not going to go much deeper than that. But
I think you just did,
ultimately,
man.
yeah, you get the idea. So eventually we closed the deal, bought Badcat, said about everybody says, well, you bought a company. I'm like, no, a company is like software and P&Ls and reports and I bought a brand name. There was no
IT,
company.
yeah, assets.
Yeah, there was nothing. I mean, so I set about building all that. I had piece by piece.
And what year was this?
This was September of 2011 is when I walked in the door.
Hey, Joe,
And so actually,
a couple of people are asking you to turn your mic level up a little bit.
Oh, I already did.
Okay, fine. Shut up.
Well, we can test it. We can test it more if I have something good to say. But
All
now,
right.
but so I eventually the partners that I took with Badcat, I bought them out, moved out on my own, and then just started building the thing slowly but surely, and got a big lucky break. My wife is a dentist, right? And so she cleans the teeth of this amazing guy named Ted, right? My partner, Ted Dobson. And he is what you call a blues lawyer, right? He owns this big,
yes, I know what that is.
yeah, he's got, maybe 300 grand with the guitars, and there's about 6 of them. You know what I mean? There's not a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
But then he was reaching out to my wife saying, "Hey, I want to meet your husband." And so then what he did, my wife kept coming home saying, "Hey, this guy wants to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh, great. I'm going to go out with a dinner with some amp guy that's going to just like quiz me about, 5E3 circuits and crap." I was like, "No, I'm out." And so he came into my wife's office and he said, "We're going to have the Christmas party on my boat. This is what we're going to do." And so my wife comes home and says, "Okay, we're having the Christmas party on the boat. You're going to be there." And so I get there, and it's like a 90-foot off the back of a Newport Beach house in the harbor. Like, holy crap. So he comes over, grabs me, hey, come on upstairs. And we go upstairs and we sit and we talk, and we start to become friends. He comes down to the shop, and I do a little asking around about him because he lived in my old neighborhood in North Tustin, and turns out he's just a tremendous guy, and he has done everything he said he was going to do since day one, right? He's like, I'm going to stay out of the way. You invent, you hire, you get people in here to build creative things, and just keeps pushing his thing forward. I'll handle the finance end of it, and never the two shall meet. Well, I'll stay in this lane, you stay in that lane, and it's been fantastic. I've been with Ted now for a little over 4 years, almost 5 years. And we've gone, we're 4 times bigger than we were, and we're going to be twice as big next year as we are right now. We're doing great, and I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So tube amps are dying is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, actually, I thought it would be really smart to put an ad out that says, look, tube amps are obsolete. They're finished. Send all old tube amps to John Thompson at 1030 West 17th Street for disposal. I specialize in 65 deluxe reverbs. Any old 60s Marshalls you want to get rid of, just send them my way. I'll gladly, high watts, I'll take them all. I'll throw them away for you.
Yeah. We'll dispose of them
properly. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Wow. So in that whole story, there's no intersection with Mark. So far.
No, I actually ran into him one time, and early on, I think it would have been around like 2013 or something like that. He came by and introduced himself to me, and I told him at the time, I said, hey, I'm taking really good care of your kids. And he said to me, oh, those aren't my kids. And I go, oh, yes, they are. They are definitely your kids. I am just a caretaker, my friend. And so then I tried to get literally tried to get a hold of him for maybe 8 to 10 years. And I kept running into dead ends. People say, oh, I've got his number, and they give me a number. And I ended up calling this one guy like 6 times. The guy's going like, dude, I'm not Mark Sampson. Stop calling me. I go, okay, sorry. I hung up. And then one day, a really good, we have a mutual friend, a great friend of mine, Joel Whitley. He's an R&B guitar player. And he was down the shop, came by for some tacos and to hang out. And I don't know why, for some reason that day I said, God, I want to get Mark Sampson back here, And he said, oh, I got his number. And I said, I've heard that before, but I'll tell you what, give him my number and see if he'll reach out to me. And then sure enough, I don't know, a few days later, my phone rings and say, hey, this is Mark Sampson. And I'm like, oh, he's here. I go, and he said, well, first off, I don't want to design any amps. I don't want to do any, I'm not interested in this. And I go, look, I haven't asked you that. I just want to have lunch and try to, because the thing is with Badcat, right? I know there's Joe Aldrich was involved. I know Mark was involved. I know Rick Parada was involved. James was involved. And if you ask any of those people, like the story, the backstory of the company that I own, nobody's talking. Because I think there were lawsuits flying all over the place in the early years, right? I went out.
Those resources didn't know as much as they would like you to think they knew.
Yeah, so I went out and I had lunch.
Mark was the one guy that knew what he was doing and why, and everybody else was just like.
Mark was fantastic.
It's like this, right?
Yeah, Mark was. I went and met him, and we just sat and we talked for. We hung out for like 2.5 hours. We just and we were talking about amplifiers and drag racing and tubes and all kinds of stuff. We took common interests, and I just found him to be just the most genuine, nice person I've ever met in my life, with exception maybe Steve Freyat. But other than that, I think it was definitely Mark.
Yeah. But did you guys discuss flying down and beating up Hartley Peavy? That's what I want to know.
No, but I'm telling you right now, I think Steve and I can take him easy, no doubt. He can even throw in that Cortland guy. We'll take them both. But anyway, so Mark came down. So I had this idea that I wanted to do this sort of like masterwork series, right? So I reached out to some people, like Santiago Alvarez, right? And Jeff Bober and some other guys. And I basically wanted to go to them and say, hey, take away all the constraints of what a manufacturer usually puts on you, like especially Santiago, right? Where they'd say, we want a 2-channel 50-watt, these features. It's got to be $899, and it's got to be, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And my instruction to Mark was just build something freaking cool, man.
Yeah.
Build something that's going to last and people are going to talk about for 30 years or 50 years.
Yeah.
And he said, well, give me a place to start. And I said, well, I mean, you've learned a lot in the last, 20, 30 years. I mean, it's like, well, what does the DC-30 look like now that you've had all this time away from it? In the early Badcat, which is kind of the same thing. And he said, oh, I've got that. But this is the work ethic Mark has, right? And I learned this about him when I went back to Iowa, to Mason City, Iowa, where his funeral was recently.
Mm.
A week later, he come and pick it up. I got it built in my garage. So I drove up to La Crescenta, to his house, picked it up, came back, plugged it in, and I'm like, holy shit, right? It's like, damn, this thing sounds good. And it was like Steve will understand this. It was very fast, right? In your hands. Almost like for me, I like the slower, kind of spongier. Whoops, I messed up. My amp kind of says, don't worry, I got this, right? This amp says, you made a mistake,
Yeah.
And but in a great player's hands, it's a deadly weapon like that, because all that nuance comes out, But so we started. I mean, we were on the phone. I mean, like 3 times a week, 4 times a week for like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, and we were planning all this stuff in the coming years. And sometimes I get emotional about it, so I apologize. But we spent a lot of time together.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed his company. And I
Well,
felt like I had a big, like it was like a big brother. It was like a big brother that I didn't have.
Oh, that's nice.
It was fantastic.
I saw a video you did, which is why I decided to reach out, because I had been thinking that I met him before he started Matchless, and we were in this little 700 square foot storefront, and that's where we were next door to Bob Bradshaw's place.
Oh yeah,
it's like four little units, 700 square foot units, little funky 40s, 50s storefront units on Magnolia Boulevard in North Hollywood. And it was owned by this guy named Bob, who was just the sweetest old codger. And he would always come over and hang out and talk about, the unit that we took, it had this big desk in it. And I said, do you want this desk? And he goes, no, I want it to be here. I want you to use it. I said, well, I was just going to go buy one, but I mean, you sure you don't want it? He says, I made my first $1 million on that desk. I want you to use it. And I said, well, what has this place been in the past? He says, well, I've several businesses. One was a magazine stand. It was a massage parlor in the 50s. And, the story just kept getting raunchier and raunchier the more he talked. And he was just a crack up to talk to. He claimed that he was one of the guys in the Enola Gay taking pictures of
dropping bombs
on Hiroshima. I don't know how far-fetched that was, but he was just the kind of guy that let him tell his story. He was such a sweetheart. He always wanted to go, hey, sometimes I would go work on Saturday, and he would be coming around, to look over the place and see if it needed anything. And he says, why don't you come with me? I'm going to go over to Baskin Robbins. You want to go? And I'm like, yeah. So we hung out. At any rate, so there's these 4 little units, and one of them was Bradshaw, one was me, and one of them this guy that had this little sort of semi-recording studio outfit thing. And at the very end, Mark had that spot, and he was repairing AC-30s out of there.
Oh, okay.
And
where was this at?
On Magnolia, in
North Hollywood,
east of Vineland on Magnolia in North Hollywood, between Vineland and Cahuenga.
Wow.
Little funky place. And so he set up a little workbench in there, and he was having people bring stuff over and do repairs. And I would go over and talk, and he would come over to my place, and we'd chat a little bit. Not too much stuff, but hey, do you have a capacitor? Blah 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 blah. Or do you have any of these kind of tubes? Yeah, I might have a couple laying around. And it was just kind of like that. And I went over to his place, and he had these little row of chassis. And I said, "What you got going here?" He says, "Yeah, I'm going to try to make an amp, and it's going to be like a more bulletproof AC30 kind of a thing." And I went, "Oh, interesting." And then one day he said, "I need to move into a place where I can actually do production, so I'm going to leave this place. And I'm going to get new equipment and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave some stuff behind, and there's a workbench in here if you need it." And I said, "Well, I don't really need another workbench." And then I went back to our shop, and we have these 2 long workbenches, and then there was some space in there. And I thought, actually it would be good to have a little test bed kind of a bench, and that would be the perfect size for it. And I walked back over there, and I said, "You know what? Turns out I will take that bench off of you. How much you want?" He says, "Just take it and get it out of here." And I went, "All right." I still have it in our storage unit in our
No,
house.
wow. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
So if you want it, you can have it.
Yeah.
It's got the
That's
original
incredible.
carpet that was on it, the whole bit. And so and then we ran across each other at this this sort of novel manufacturers face-to-face shootout review thing at SIR in San Francisco in the early 90s. And
Wait, was this for Guitar Player Magazine? One of those sort of deals?
Yeah. Everybody was there. It was, Andy Marshall and Soldano and Aspen Pittman and Randall Smith, and Paul Rivera was there. And Randall Smith and Paul Rivera put me on the spot because the guys that were representing High Watt couldn't play their way out of a bag, and they're trying to explain the amp, and Rivera just goes, "You don't know anything about this amp, do you?" And Randall goes, "Yeah, that was my impression too. Hey, Steve, you know about this shit. Why don't you go show them what it's supposed to sound like?" And I was like, "Oh, these poor guys, they were just these sort of skinny surf dudes that were like doing this." And I went, "Oh, I don't want to embarrass anybody." And the guy goes, "No, here, man, take over. We'd love it." And I went, "All right." So I tweaked on the knobs a little bit, and I played an E chord, and Paul and Randall both went, "That's a little more like it." And that was it. I put the guitar down, and I said, "Okay, I don't want to like wipe the floor with anybody, but I couldn't just sit there and watch them just butcher this thing." So when Rivera shoved me out there, I was probably too happy to oblige. It was, and then we have this round table where we're all sitting around talking about manufacturing challenges and stuff like that. There were some Fender guys there, Mitch Colby, and the other guy was doing Fender marketing, or Marshall marketing at the time. He moved to Fender later. And Carvin was there. And we were basically all just, buddies shooting the shit. It was great. And we got on the subject of Celestion speakers. And I was talking to Mark and Andy Marshall about the Celestions, and I was telling them that I basically had it with Celestion. I'm so bored with the whole conversation about Celestion that this has got to stop. And Mark was going, "Yeah, well, like we can't get what we want from them really either, so we're like modifying them ourselves."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He goes, "Well, it's kind of a trade secret." And I went, "Well, I saw one of the speakers. It looks like you're taking the doping off of it, so I understand that." And
with a T-shirt.
Yeah. And he looked at me and he went, "Yeah, among other things." And then as we walked away, Andy Marshall said, "And hitting the magnet with the hammer." And I said, "Hitting the magnet with a hammer?" And he goes, "Shh, don't let anybody hear you." And I'm like, "Seriously?" He goes, I said, I understand the concept of hitting the magnet with a hammer, to align the stresses, in steel, you whack on it and it aligns the magnetic grains. And I said, I understand that, but I don't get how any of the average guitar players that are listening to stuff distorted amps coming through speakers are going to hear the difference between a speaker that you whacked on it and one that you didn't, but he says, well, I also put them in the oven at 350 degrees for 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I've heard enough of this. It's just not going anywhere.
This is voodoo.
Yeah, that's just like, do you realize how many man hours it would take me with the number of 412 cabs we make if I was going to do a thing like that? It would take a 1 hour cabinet about 2 weeks to make, and that's just, I'm sorry, that's not worth it. But we were shooting the shit around, and I was bitching about Celestian's inconsistency. We would just get, and Mark pipes in and he goes, yeah, I agree with that. And Celestian, I think they still to this day ship pallets 120 units to a pallet.
60 now.
It was 120 at the time. Or maybe it was a minimum order of 2 pallets or something like that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's it. You get 2 pallets. It was 60 each, 120.
Yeah, and he just said, "Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's just, every time I place an order for Celestians, I get 120 different speakers." And everybody went. That kind of opened the floodgates for everybody else to just start venting, and there were no Celestian people there. Unfortunately,
what year would that have been, Steve? What was that?
Then 80, 91, 2, 3, 94, probably 3 or 4.
So early 90s in it.
Yeah, Bruce Zinke was at Fender at the time, and we had the Pitbull 5012.
Oh yeah, Kelly's chiming in. I was going to say, I think it was 94 because I remember the issue, and Kelly saying they have the issue, and it's 94. Yeah,
and
be right back.
That would have been
we were just introducing a modified version of it that had a tube rectifier in it, and like you were talking about, like a slower, softer attack version, not so stiff and super responsive and unforgiving, as they say. And I was talking to Zinke, and he goes, "I really like this, and the reverb is a lot better than the 5012. And what are you going to call it?" And I said, "I'm going to call it a Model T for the rectifier." And he goes, "You probably don't want to do that." And I said, I know that some people will associate that with the Sun amp, but Sun's not around. And he says, well, Sun Fender owns the Sun IP now, and they're going to release a model called the Model T in about a year or two. And I went, good to know. And right after that, Art Thompson comes up and he's like, okay, I'm just getting my notes together. So what's the name of this amp? Because we had just finished it and we hadn't named it yet, and we brought it over there. And he came around and he says, what are you going to call this thing? And I said, I don't know. Hold on. Just give me 2 minutes. And he goes, oh, okay. Because I just had the conversation with Zinke.
Yeah, like, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet.
Yeah.
But I got to have a name.
And I just went, shit. I'm looking around and I'm kind of running some ideas, and I go, hate it. And then Art comes around and he goes, so what's the verdict? And it's a 45 watt amp. And I said, it's going to be called the Pitbull 45. Great idea. I love it. I just
nice.
pulled it out of
thin air. That's amazing.
With 2 T's.
And Art goes, yeah, and then Zinke comes over. Oh, great save, man.
Nice.
That was thinking on your feet. I appreciate that. And on and on. Zinke was funny at that round table. Because Fender had just come out with the
Tone Master, right? The real Tone Master, right?
No, this was before that. This was the little 210.
Not the Blues DeVille.
No, it was like the size of a deluxe with 210s.
The 210s. 210s.
The ProSonic. Thank you, Kelly.
The ProSonic. Yeah. The one with no reverb or just like a head extra gain.
Art
had extra
Thompson
gain.
wrote that article, right?
Yeah, and they had put a rotary switch on the back that gave you different options of which tubes and tube or solid state rectifier and blah 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 blah. And Randy goes, well, you're going to be infringing on my patent if you put that into production, because we've got that pretty locked down. And Zinke, without even batting an eye, goes, well, we've already worked out a way to get around your patent, so you could just forget it, and just blew him off. And I'm
Wow.
like, whoa, Bruce, all right.
Whoa.
Throwing down the gauntlet. Yeah. The Bruceinator. All right.
Yeah, Randy is very fond of his patents, for sure. I mean, I know
Yeah.
stories about him as well.
One of
I
the
mean,
guys that used to work for us that worked at Mesa, he says, yeah, Randy is always surprised to find out that he didn't invent everything.
yeah, I heard he invented the toggle switch. That's what Mark was claiming. Yeah.
I love Randy. He's always been good to me, and we've had we mildly butt heads once in a while, and that's what friends do. And we also sat around and had double two-fisted wine drinking festivals at NAMM, so there's a lot of that stuff going on. Mark was more in Mark's world. He wasn't like a hobnob guy. He was there. He had an agenda, and I think he brought the Chieftain that had just been the Chieftain, little channel switching, little combo.
Chieftain, I think, is a single channel. Probably the DC30 was the one that I know he entered in some kind of a Guitar Player magazine contest thing.
I remember this being the Chieftain.
Chieftain could have been Chieftain. But I think a Chieftain's a single channel EF86 or maybe AX7 based. Oh, Clubman's EF86. So Chieftain's. I don't pay attention to the massless line anymore. I mean, I haven't really looked at it, but I think it was a single channel.
Is there a Spitfire?
No,
I remember that right?
No, Spitfire was the little guy. The little.
Yeah, I remember it being the Chieftain. I could be totally wrong. Somebody
could be.
Well, it'll be whoever's got. Hey, Kelly, you got that magazine. If you'll be able to tell what it was in there.
Yeah, please tell us.
A Super Chief in the
Super Chief.
Issue.
Okay. Super Chief.
Thanks, Kelly.
Isn't it like the 80-watt Chieftain or something like that, right?
In the amp, had a Super Chief in the amp head issue. I don't remember it being the Super Chief, but I just remember thinking that, all right, Mark is like expanding, doing a dual channel thing. Probably makes sense for him to explore that, blah, 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 blah. And then I listened to it and I went, okay, he needs to put a little more time into that, because the DC30 kind of slayed it, and but hey, that's what you do. That's what you go through that stuff, and you grind on it until you go, oh, all right, I've found the little magic seeds inside that were hidden.
The moment hits.
So
right?
Steve, what was the first Mark amp that Mark specifically designed that you heard?
The DC30.
Okay. And then, John, do you remember which model matchless it was that you heard at the Roxy?
It was a DC30, yeah. It was a DC30.
Okay, that's the amp.
But you know what? But you didn't ask me what my favorite one was.
Gee, Steve, what's your favorite one?
The
DC30.
the Lightning 15.
Oh yeah.
That was a cool little. I just thought it's the perfect size. It's cute. It roars. It's, in my usual parlance, it's the little tiny amp that likes to have the shit kicked out of it.
Yeah.
So actually,
Chieftain 112 was a combo.
Yeah, that sounds right. Chieftain 112. Maybe I thought it was a little wider. I thought maybe it was a 212, but it was definitely called a Chieftain.
It was a little wide for what it was. I mean, killing.
And I thought, nice effort, and obviously he's, evolving things. Great. So we had a little bit of a chat, and then I didn't see him until after the whole problem with mattress developed, and he was at a NAMM show shortly after that, and he seemed kind of beleaguered, but he will also seem kind of upbeat. And he's like, the thing that I got out of all this is that I got to really pay more attention to how to run a business. And then it ended up, all the legal stuff that ensued. And I just thought,
that was a mess.
That was a mess, and that's too bad, because this isn't anybody that's going to do that thing justice. They're just going to have to copy what was already done, and there wasn't anybody that I was aware of at the company after Mark was gone that had the skill, the passion, the attention span, and the drive to take it anywhere. Just like, let's just keep milking it until God knows what. That was my
the thing when people ask me, like, when they say, well, what's the difference between matchless and Badcat, right? Especially like today, right? I always tell them, look, if you want to drive a 63 Camaro, get a matchless. But if you want the new one with the analog brakes and the big motor and the air conditioning, get a Badcat, because we got all the bells and whistles and the new stuff in it, and modern engineering and the buffered effects loops and things like that, that aren't in a lot of the matchless amps. Because I would never denigrate what they're doing. I mean, they're staying true to their roots and giving people exactly what they got in 1991 and 92. And so I mean, I played funny enough, I played a matchless maybe 10 years ago that I really liked. It was called the King Cobra. It was this it was an EL34, like a channel 2 of the Wildcat kind of thing, but it had a tremolo, and it was just big and full and fat and juicy and all that kind of stuff. You could grab the mid-range and mid-air and sort of wrestle it to the ground. It was pretty cool. But I don't know what I don't keep up with what they're doing over there. I mean, I know once in a while I see Phil, and we just kind of shake hands and say hi, but I'm kind of like Mark in the sense that I'm in my own little world. I'm kind of ensconced in what I'm doing and everything. But I got back. I went to go see his. I got asked to speak at his funeral by his wife Carla.
Wow.
And they had his best friend Ray. That Ray was friends with him. I think they were 10 years old when they met. And at the service, his dad recently passed away. His dad was 93, by the way. Mark died at 71. But they had everything. They had his Boy Scout uniform. I mean, they had the little clay dot. They stuck his little 5-year-old hand in. Mark, and he had like all these little radios that he built when he was a kid. He built radios, and his dad fixed TVs. And the funny thing is, I really feel like I got to know him by visiting his hometown, because I met Ray. And Ray, this is freaking mind blowing. Okay, Ray wanted like a 1930s Indian motorcycle. Well, so what he did is he didn't go out and find one. He got out the fucking lathe and built one. Like, I mean, like, and
Wait,
I mean, like,
Ray did this?
Yeah, I mean, like the motor and the pistons and the gears, and the handlebars bent, and the only thing that he did not fabricate was the headlamp. And I swear to God, that's it. That's the. And if you saw this motorcycle, you would think it was like discovered in some auction. It was pristine, beautiful. And
is that still his best friend, like throughout life?
Well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they talk all the time. In fact, he and Mark, he had pictures that he showed me where Mark was into racing cars and stuff, and he had this car that was a 4-door, this big ugly 4-door, and Mark wanted it to be a 2-door. He got a blowtorch and cut the freaking car in half, and cut the back seat out and reattached it shorter. And rebuilt the drivetrain and rebuilt all the stuff.
Like that. I had a cousin like that in Eastern Washington.
I mean, and then I saw the picture of the finished car. I'm like, oh, holy crap, that looks great. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. When I saw his hometown, I mean, there was like, 35 miles, and there's a silo. 45 miles that way, there's something up there. I'm not sure what the hell it is, but there's a whole lot of green stuff between us and the next thing, And so there weren't like auto parts stores like around the corner, right? So they had
then there's
fabrication equipment.
I had a cousin
Yeah.
like that, an older cousin, and he and his buddies. This is in Eastern Washington, out in the woods, and they had stacks and stacks of guitar bodies out behind, car bodies out behind. They had chassis in one pile and bodies, 30s and 40s, car bodies. They would take parts off and stuff, and they were always fabricating some new thing. And when I'd go out there during the summer for vacation and stay with my grandmother for a week or something like that, and I'd go watch them, and I'd stand around and I'd say stuff like, "Are you going to put that piece back in there that fell on the ground?" And my cousin would turn around and look at me like, "Will it run without it?" And I was like, I guess, I don't know. And he goes, "Fine, shut up. Just don't get in the way." I'm like, yeah. Oh, sweet. Look at that.
That's the motorcycle that Ray built.
Oh my God. That's the real.
Is that unbelievable?
That is unbelievable. The red.
Now, what
the white
is the fan? What's the function of that fan in the corner?
Oh, I don't know. Let me see. I didn't notice the fan. I was just too busy looking at the girl there. There's a fan. Look at that. Who knows? I mean, a fan? Maybe he built the fan.
Probably.
But look at this.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
He cast that motor. And this is the part that blew my mind right here. Look at this. See this.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, I love
mean,
that.
that's a special kind of genius that does something like that.
Yeah.
And Ray was, I mean, all these people were like, Mark was the guy, he was the big man on campus in town. Everybody, he would settle disputes. He was honest as the day is long. He was the guy that they went to and said, "Mark, what should we do?" And, so many stories about him going out into those negative 20-degree blizzards, getting people out of their cars. And I mean, he was just, it's a freaking tragedy.
So along those lines, we have a buddy here in the comments asking this question, because I was wondering, how did Mark wind up in Southern California? Do you know that story?
Yeah, this is the tragic thing is I wish I had recorded every single talk I had with him because he told me so many great stories. And I know he went out to California because he wanted to get into the amp business. Okay. And I think he ended up hooking up with John Jorgensen as an amp
this
tech.
Makes sense.
As an amp tech. He traveled with John's band, working on amps and keeping the AC30s running every night. But yeah, Jorgensen, I met him at the NAMM show.
That was the Helicasters, right?
Yeah, Helicasters. Yeah. And John Jorgensen is also very, very sweet man, super nice, and thinks very highly of Mark. And, he sent a video message at his funeral too when he was there. But yeah, one of those kind of guys that you just meet, and I'm like I told Steve, I think I might have said this before, is like, I snuck into the NAMM show when I was 17 years old or 18 years old, right? Because I live pretty close to where it is. And it's like you go through life, being really obsessed with music equipment and gear, and you're like everybody else is, looking at you like, so, what the hell's wrong with you? And you go through life like being a big purple bird with the red feather on your head. And then when you sneak into the NAMM show, you go, oh my God, this whole freaking building is full of purple birds with red feathers on their head. And Steve is like, and he's like one of my tribe, man. And one of my major regrets is not getting to know you better too, my friend. I wish I'd gotten you to know better as well. But I huge admirer of his work as well. I mean, Steve is fantastic.
Well, when I saw your video, that really spoke to me. And I had been thinking, as crazy as the news cycle is, as quickly as things move, there's people that are going away that you don't even notice it happen because there's the next psychotic thing getting thrown in your face. And I've had people that I care about, leave, I feel, prematurely, and it just seems like that was just yesterday's news. And I felt that about Mark. I felt that about a few people that, I mean, at least the magazines, even though they're online magazines, they should at least make an effort to recognize this legacy, because the guy did do, he did leave a mark. He did say certain things that were true for him and that people latched onto, about cathode biasing and class A, the importance of that, and the
I
hand
blame
wiring
that on
thing,
Aspen.
and circuit boards are bad, and regardless of what validity you attach to it, the point is he started that conversation, and it continues to this day, and people still debate about it all the time. And that's not somebody that you just let go and forget about. Just let him go into the past, and not at least have some kind of a space. We don't have huge reach on this show, but I just felt like, that story just kind of went quiet way too fast for my liking. And I just, when I saw it, and I reached out to you, and we started talking, I just went, yeah, we can at least give this conversation a little bit more weight and depth. And I'm really glad you were able to come along and do that, and felt like you were able to do that. And especially bringing the stories back from, the memorial. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I met all of his kids, I met his wife, his friends, his family. I mean, it was this little tiny town, Mason City, Iowa. Clear Lake is where the service was, but they're from Mason City.
Mm.
And he kind of, though I blame the whole Class A thing on Aspen Pittman, to be honest with you, with that book, that book that he's, the Vox AC30 is a Class A amplifier. It's like, is it? I'm not sure it is.
And Aspen was, a good friend and an adversary when we were both in the mood to butt heads. So, but it was never personal, the head butting. It was just like, I would draw the line every once in a while. He would like do his shtick.
Yeah.
And, Hartley Peavy called him a carnival barker, and I'm going, yeah, Hartley, you haven't got any room to talk here, Okay.
Yeah.
But,
guilty as charged.
Yeah. But and probably Aspen would be the first guy to tell you that he was like, that's marketing, dude. You got to get in people's faces. You got to show them what's what. You got to show them a different thing that they've never seen before, and blah blah blah. And he was willing to go out on a limb and do crazy stuff. He would line up studio engineer guys and say, I want a preamp that's got every feature of every classic microphone preamp or limiter or something. I want you to just put them all in one box, and we'll call it the super preamp. Or the PV had gotten the Viper VIPER trademark, so he called his Viper preamp the Vipre.
Oh boy.
And Aspen was not the kind of guy that you would send one of your lawyer cronies to and tell him to cease and desist, and he would basically say, cease and desist this clown.
Right.
He was good about that. He was a well-known rageaholic, but we got along great, and we get in each other's faces and then hug and go have a scotch, and there was, Mark was an integral part of the crazies that had ideas about things that they were passionate about, not just fluff. I never thought of what he did as fluff or rejiggered, remanufactured old ideas, retread kind of shit. I always kind of marveled at the products that came out and the form factors of them. I would just look at them and go, the preamp, the rack mount preamp, And I'm like, this is a 3-tube preamp in 4 rack spaces. I've got a 100-watt aside stereo power amp with a toroid in it and a whole bunch of tubes and all kinds of shit in there, and it's 4 rack spaces. It's like, you think you could have just like put it in 1 or maybe 2 worst case, but obviously he didn't think of it that way. He thought of it as, he appeared to think of it as, this is the way I do it. Love me, love me. You know,
he was a guy that just to understand him a little better. You know, he was just one of those kind of guys that most of the things that he made. You know, he wasn't the kind of guy that would go to the store and get this or go and get that. Like when I was even talking about doing the Era 30 with him, right? I said, hey, I'm going to send you a chassis. He goes, I'll make a chassis. I go, you're going to make a chassis?
Yeah.
Why? I've got
it's fun and I can. Yeah.
You know,
because I can. Yeah. Well, we used to run into each other at what's the electronics
PRW swap meet,
the surplus place up in Panorama City or
oh, okay,
Coima, Apex
Junior.
Yeah.
Place.
Yeah. I used to go there all the time, and half the time I would go there just to rummage through one particular area of stuff. You know, I know exactly where the chassis were. I knew where the capacitors were. I knew where the standoffs were, the wire. You know, I knew where everything was. I spent so much time in there. And when you spent enough time in that place and they saw you as a regular, there would be little pathways that looked like they went behind the counter, but they were really actually public access, but they never told you that. But if you found your way back there, they wouldn't say, hey, you can't be back there. There was a staircase that went up to the upstairs accounting office, and underneath there, they had like all the silver mica caps and the sort of specialty things that they didn't want the average Joe rummaging through. But I would just like walk in there and go around behind the counter and just disappear down this little cubby hole and spend about an hour just digging through stuff. And they knew that I would always pull out the box, fish through and find what I need, and then put all the stuff that I'd taken out of the box back in the box and put it back where it was. Because everybody else would just pull out a box, grab something, dump shit on the floor, and then leave the bin like on the floor or sideways or something, or they would knock it over and not pick it up. And, you know, I was always the guy that carefully.
Rule number 1, don't be a dick.
Put the stuff back. And sometimes I'd be in there for an hour or two, and on my way out, you know, Mark would be at the front counter sitting on a stool, not like buying anything, just shooting the shit with the sales guy there like it was a bar, you know.
Wow.
And it was a crack up. It was funny. He just like I was looking for a particular scope, and they didn't have the one I wanted. They had 4 or 5 scopes, and they were in various states of disrepair.
Yeah.
And if you said, do any of these work? And they go, yeah. And I said, well, can I hook one up and check it out? Well, it doesn't work now. You know,
when does it work?
But if you want to buy it, we'll take it over to the lab and have it calibrated for you, and then it'll work. We're not going to go spend a lot of money calibrating 50 scopes that are 20-year-old scopes, you know, nice ones, Tektronix and all this kind of stuff. They weren't going to spend all that money doing that. If you wanted one, then they would send it over to the local. There was a local calibration and repair facility for that kind of stuff. And they would call you a few days later and say, hey, your scope is ready to go. And then you go buy it. And they didn't charge you extra for it. They charged you what they would charge after it was working. But you couldn't test it to find out it was working until you committed to buy it. And then you got it. And then you hoped it worked. And, you know, after a couple of those episodes, I just went, you know what? I'm just going to get one of those newer ones because I'm not using them the way to their full capacity. You know, I'm not testing 100 megahertz circuits all day long. I'm not doing that. We have a line testing thing we have a more sophisticated dual channel scope that we use for the digital stuff that we're working on. We have all that in another area, but as far as QC is concerned, we just need the basics. And so a newer scope that actually has way more capability than we need, at least it's going to have a warranty. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go get a blah, 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 blah. I was talking to Mark and I said, I'm just going to go get one of those mid-price things. He goes, it's going to last you a year. And I said, this 25-year-old Tektronix, even after it gets calibrated, is going to need to be worked on again in a year anyway. So what's the diff? And so I went and bought the one that I was going to get in, that was 2019, I think. And it's still working great, No
calibration?
No, I bought a new one. I bought a brand new
okay.
model. And it works great. And I've bought some other pieces of test gear from that same company, and one or two of them, failed. And I just contacted the company. Hey, I got a problem. And that I'd get a return label and a return authorization like that day, send it to them, get it back 3 or 4 days later. And but he was that, no, you can't use any of that new shit, man. You got to use the real thing, the Tektronix 2000.
That sounds like him, yeah. Definitely sounds like him.
And I still have my Tektronix scope. I have 2 of them. And, the time that I would spend, where you were talking about how things are flying, and we're experiencing that same exponential sort of velocity that's going on. And if I have 10 minutes to deal with something, I'm going to find the most efficient way to get this thing out of my hair. If I've got a scope that's down, I've got a backup. And so the backup is going to go up on the bench, and the new one that's under warranty, I'm going to get a return authorization for it, and out it's going to go, and then I'm going to get back to workflow. And that's all I care about these days. A minute is really valuable to me every damn day. A minute makes or breaks my workflow. 10 minutes breaks my workflow.
That's where you and I are very different, because I'm constantly screwing stuff up. Massively.
Well, I'm not saying I don't screw stuff up. I'm just saying that
and I'm inefficient.
The collateral damage from operating like on the fly and keeping the velocity going all the time is really, really, really low compared to the 2.5 hours I would spend pulling all the knobs and switches off my old Tektronix scope and cleaning the shafts and finding screws that fit, and that some of the knobs are also old that the plastic is brittle and they just break off. And now you got to go find a knob for it and screw this. I don't get near soldering irons or scopes. I try to avoid that stuff. We've got
I'm involved
redundancy, lots of redundancy in test gear in the QC department. People come in, why do you got 2 of those and 3 of those and 1 of those and another one that looks like the same thing, only slightly? Why do you have all that?
My philosophy is I try to find people that are smarter than me, which is really easy to do, and then I just get the hell out of their way and let them do their jobs.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I run it. I get involved in like the new product development, and for the longest time I think I was sort of focusing Badcat's energy on creating products that for gigging musicians and clubs and things, right? And for the last 8 months, I've been really focusing on getting a really good guitar sound into a DAW. And I must have spent, I don't know, $10,000 on different products, trying them out. And, I've got like an aux box over there, and I've got the Tonex and a bunch of crap around here. And I must tell you, my professional assessment is they all suck. And I will unapologetically say that, because I have tried to get, they sound good until you stick an SM57 in front of the fucking cabinet.
You're
you go,
preaching.
oh,
You're preaching, brother.
Jesus.
You're preaching, and we all made this sort of unitary assessment that there's the instrument that you're playing to be inspired to play, and what you get back is, that was great. I pulled that off, and I love the way it sounds, and I love the way it felt doing it. And it wasn't just that I got it on tape, but it was a rewarding experience to do it. And I probably put more energy and thought and attention to detail in it under those circumstances than I would just having my digital workflow tool, because that's what it is. It's a workflow tool. It's a thing that when you got to get a laundry detergent commercial done, on time and under budget, and you don't give a rat's ass about, the fine subtleties in the chime. You just like, yeah, I got this sound, I got that, blah blah blah, bang bang boom. I got a verse and a chorus and an outro and a cue here and and I can pull 8 cues out of that. But that's workflow. That's what you do when you're just cranking out task work. Am I right?
Right. Yeah, not inspirational music. I hope I didn't just like destroy your Universal Audio sponsorship. I apologize for that.
Oh yeah, well, you don't have to worry about that. We've been doing our best to
But I mean, this is kind of why we're all here, right? I mean, it's not just we all love music, right? We all love music, and I like religiously love it.
I was just hanging out with Joe Barisi yesterday, and he comes over, and he's flooding me with data. He has been going down the super rabbit hole of IRs and reactive loads.
I've done that.
Yeah, and he has Joe speak. He's got his Barisi has got his own language, and like the attenuator setting on a mic pre is a click. I just put it into my board and blah, I put it through my mic pre, and I do 3 clicks, and it's just not right. I go, Joe, what's a click? A click. It's just like on the pre. It's it's not a continuous. I said, I know that you use a 1073 or whatever the hell it is. I know that that's your main tool. I know that you use it a lot. I know it's a stepped attenuator, a stepped rotary pad on the input that determines where the input stage is going to start saturating, and then you need to get a certain level into the thing, and then you set the attenuator to where it's the right amount of signal going in to where it starts to saturate the input stage, and that's what you're trying to get that thing to do before it goes to tape. I understand that you're doing that. I just don't understand what you mean by. Are you talking about the difference between like the 35 dB step and the 40 dB step? Is that what you mean by the click? And he goes, well, yeah. He's looking at me like, yeah, I thought you'd figured that out already. But the way he talks, and he's so fast, and he's like, and he throws in all this other information, and it takes 5 conversations with him to parse all that and extract the information. And then he went back to his studio and thought about it. And I took the data that I'd gotten from him and thought about it. And then the next day, I'm in my text. I'm just getting reams and reams and reams of hand-drawn spreadsheets of all the different reactive loads that he used. And he measured the DC resistance of the impedance, not of the DC resistance at the speaker out. He's going, well, I measured the impedance. Like, no, you measured the DC resistance. Yeah, whatever, and but in that process of going back and forth and grinding out the syntax, the verbiage, figuring out what the value of the word is that he's using, how to apply that. After 3 or 4 days of that conversation, I started going, okay, I finally get exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then I take his power load back, and I go through it, and I made an adjustment for him, and I gave it Patrick, and he goes, okay, it's finally 100% right now, and it's the best reactive load. It already was before, but it's even better now. And now, fuck all those other guys. And I'm like, whoa. But after going through that whole process, he's going, and my conclusion is put a microphone of a fucking speaker.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, they work. You know, they'll do the job. Like you say, if you're like I did some music for a podcast recently. It was a Rams Talk podcast, and they wanted an AC/DC guitar, and I'm not going to hook all. You know, I'm just going to stick in a, you know, if you get something like that and you just want to bang it out, it's fun. It works. It's quick, but it's not inspiring. It's not something you're gonna listen to again and again and go, wow, I really like the sound of that guitar I got down on tape. That sounds fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You know. I mean, it's a tool, but like I went on this podcast not too long ago where they said, modeling or tubes, and I said yes, they both have a place, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a place for a Helix, there's a place for a Kemper, there's a place for a, you know, you want to get a pit bull, crank that fucker and put a mic in front of it. It's going to be ultimately more sad. It's a good, better, best, I think. You know, they're better, they're good, better, but they're not the best. I mean, the best is a real tube amp cranked, and we all know that. You, Steve, I saw you did a video a while ago. I don't know how long, maybe it's quite a while ago. You don't look much younger in the video, so maybe it wasn't that long ago. You were talking about high watts, and you had all these high watts you were demonstrating. And I've always been fascinated by the high watt circuit. You know, I think it's like it if you get it in the right spot, man, it's like the best sounding amp I've ever heard. But it's so hard to get it in that spot because you got to be in the right room and it's got to be the right guitar. You know, I'm begging you.
That suit on to be able to tolerate it for an hour or two at a time.
But I am begging you, with your skill set, man, give us a high watt that sounds great in a bedroom. You know, without attenuating it, a little 20-watt high watt that really has a master on it. It does the thing that make it sound like everybody thinks the high watt sounds like. You know, that kind of a sound.
That is actually closer to reality than I'd even dare to admit right at the moment. But that is a big ask because it's all about scale. If you listen to the best era of the DR103 and the DR504s, and you play them side by side, one of them just knocks you right over on your heels, and the other one is like has this great, you know, what Erico calls the swing, you know, the even harmonic sort of expanse of harmonic conflagrations that are going on, that how the different harmonics interact with each other when you play a legato E chord. And the thing that you notice about the 100 is the difference is that it's so phenomenally greater in terms of headroom and dynamic range that you can't be in the room with it to get it to sound like the 50 does. That's really what started me on this whole journey, because I had a 50 and I thought if 50 is good, 100 is going to be twice as good. And it turned out to be like deadly. And then I was going like, no, there's got to be some middle ground in there somewhere. And I spent the next 5 years trying to find it. And then I ended up starting an amp company to figure out what that formula was and refine it. But, you know, we talked on the last show, I think, somebody asked the question about the power scaling circuit, and my standard reply to that is just like, well, what are you scaling? To get the high watt sound in a compact thing, you have to just carefully scale everything down to the size that you want it to be, where it's manageable volume wise, you know, like on a desktop amp or something like that, something really small. And this all goes back to the difference between people that just copy a circuit and put it in a smaller form factor with smaller transformers and expect it to be the little version of the big one. You don't get that by just randomly you know, part swapping it down to a manageable size. Somebody's always going to go, I'm going to use overbuilt transformers. Okay, wrong. You're never going to get the scale down to where it needs to behave. Like when you, here's what I mean. The new GPDI, for example, you plug that, it's a 1 watt amp. You plug it in, you plug your guitar into that, you plug the line out directly into a DAW, and you listen to it on monitors or a headphone, and it sounds like you've got a giant blazing amp in another room. And it sounds real, it feels real, because it is real. It's all carefully scaled down so that when you put it in headphones at the volume where it's just below the threshold of pain, you can't tell the difference between the loud one that you're managing the volume down and the little one that you're managing the volume up. And the scale is the key to make that happen. And so yeah, I understand what you're saying, and that's the reason that they don't exist so far, because most of the people that just do clone stuff, they don't understand the relationship of the parts in the power amp stage, and the fact that only certain kinds of tubes are available for that kind of a project. The average person will go, well, I can choose from EL34s or 606s or EL84s or 6V6s, and some people don't like EL84s, and it's just completely the wrong conversation. It's what you do with them and how you design the transformers and get the headroom so that they don't sound like a ratty EL84 amp, because you built a ratty circuit around EL84s, and then you're blaming the tubes.
Yeah.
And this has always been my kvetching point, that you assign so much value to how you think the tubes behave that you totally miss how to design an amplifier so that it will behave the way you just described.
Yeah, which is why I don't do customs. I mean, people used to call and say, hey, I want to get a this with 6V6s. And invariably, they've got this sound in their head that is unachievable, or they think it by just changing the 6V6 tube, somehow a Black Cat's going to sound like a blazing deluxe reverb or something.
And there's no amount of telling that person that that the reason I'm not going to attempt to do that is because I'm never going to meet your expectation for what the outcome is supposed to be. You're going to be disappointed.
Right.
I've learned this. We've talked about this a million times. I've learned this with guitars. I never tell a guitar luthier what I want in a guitar, because I'm going to get a Homer mobile every fucking time. I'm going to get a piece of junk that doesn't work. Because, well, I think I like maple neck, so it should have a maple neck. And I like mahogany body, so it should have a mahogany body. And I kind of like humbuckers, but not too much output, so that should be on there. And then you get it, and it's like, what the hell is this monstrosity?
Yeah, I had a guy call me and said that he wanted me to build him a Black Cat with a steel chassis because steel sounds different than aluminum. I thought, run as fast as I can.
Yeah.
From this guy.
Yeah. There's somebody that will do that for you. It's not me.
And then when you're discussing, a killer version of, say, a DR103, are we talking about or scaling it down rather? Are we talking about how the 103 sounds in the room, or are we talking about how it sounds sitting in front of monitors, mic'd, and in a track sort of thing?
Right, and whose sound are we talking about? Gilmore's? Are we talking about Pete Townsend's? Are we talking about Jimmy Page's high watt? Which one you want to?
And which John?
Go ahead.
You were saying earlier, John. Talking about the blues lawyer kind of thing, where it's like, you have all the right gear, but you have the wrong pair of hands.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sorry. Okay,
Dave Friedman would refer to that as hating hands.
Oh yeah, that's right. Hating hands.
Oh man, this guy's got all the best gear. The only problem is he's got hating hands. He always have that impish grin on his face when he would say that, but it was true. The video that you're referring to, is that the one where we're in Joe's studio and we have them all lined up on top of cabinets and we're
I think it was. Yeah, I saw it a couple of years ago, and it stuck with me
yeah,
when I was watching it. It was
yeah,
fat. It was fun to watch.
yeah.
Obviously, I'm a junkie. This
That
kind of
was the
stuff.
one where Erica was explaining her concept of swing, and it sounds ridiculous until you see it in action. Then you go, that little Japanese girl's got a real point there. I think she's got a handle on it, because she absolutely does. And she knows when she hears all the delicate harmonics,
Right.
And you know what else she's honest
in
about?
the right place. And if they're not in the right place, it goes from this to this. And she'll go, it does this. And then, what do you think of this? She goes, does this.
There's something funny. I was with John Bingham. We were, John.
Yeah.
John says hi, by the way, Stevie. He loves you.
I'll send him
We were out in Missouri at one of our dealers out there, and I brought with me the Era 30 prototype at the time before we launched it. And we took it upstairs. I had this big kind of a barn sort of a room, and he just opened it up out of this 212, and John was about 20 feet in front of it. And he said to me, this sort of sums it up. He says, I know that I'm going deaf, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And that's a good
The Sound City 100 is like that.
Yeah, you know you're going deaf, but it doesn't hurt. It just is that just beautiful. All these musical frequencies are just hitting your ears. It just sounds
There's
fantastic.
not a harsh,
the
there's
old,
no harsh aspects of it.
the old Hendrix on Dick Cavett. Why do you play so loud? I have to reach through people's soul. I have to get through all the outside noise and get right to people's soul. And that's how I do it.
I want to show you one funny thing that I made Mark laugh hard one time. I was at the NAMM show, and they were playing some Justin Derrico was there, and he was playing out of the new Cub 5, right? And Mark looked at me, he goes, dang man, that thing sounds really good. And I looked back at him, I said, maybe the student is now the master. And he almost like wet himself laughing. I said, well, so honestly, it's probably more your circuit than mine. So still, even to this day,
and Justin's not a bad component.
Justin can make a PV Bandit. He can make a PV Bandit sound good. Sorry, Hartley, but yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's that whole Chet Atkins thing of that guitar sounds really great. And then he sets it on the stand and goes, "Oh yeah, how's it sound now?"
How's it sound now?
Yeah, my favorite thing is Gilmore on Saturday Night Live when he released his solo album. It was about 83, 85, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Wish You Were Here or something?
Division Bell or something, wasn't it?
Oh, that sounds familiar. He
Division
goes on
90s.
Saturday Night Live and he sits in with the Saturday Night Live band, and he's got G.E. Smith next to him doing what
His thing, yeah. The Frankenstein face.
Yeah. And Gilmore is playing a Steinberger into a Rat pedal into a Crate 112 combo.
And sounds like David Gilmour.
And every time somebody tells me, well, you got to have those WEM cabs with the really, giant magnet 200-watt Fanes crescendos in it to get that sound, and I'm like, go watch this Saturday Night Live performance right here, and then and go away, please, thank you. Just like lock the door behind you. I'm done having this conversation again. It's like,
I mean, if everybody could play like David Gilmour, they wouldn't need you and me, Steve. They would go out and get really cheap amps, and it'd be fine.
And I love the
maybe not inspired, but fine.
I love the Josh Home thing that the little PV amp that, because he went, okay, this is really my secret, and like this little $200 amp shot up to $1,500, and
yeah,
like if this guy isn't jerking your chain, seriously, come on. But
there was a pedal like that. Wasn't something like this, something monkey that was like that Josh Scott went off on, and all of a sudden they were $300 on Reverb or something. It was some cheap $99 piece of junk DOD, and then Josh did this video, said, "Oh, look at this, and it does that," and all of a sudden it was $300 on Reverb.
I just feel like staying in this particular lane and avoiding, it's like being in traffic and it's taking you forever to get from point A to point B because traffic's so dragging, and it turns out that everybody's stopped because somebody's changing a tire on the inside lane of the freeway.
There it is.
Yeah,
That's
baby.
Bad Monkey.
Bad Monkey. That's the one.
Yeah.
What do they cost now? Like $50.
This one, 135.
There you go. Well, that's still kind of high for an old.
Well, I don't even know
POV.
what site this is. This is on what? Used on eBay for about $100. Whoa, hold on. On eBay, there's one for $100, $325. Wow, they kind of vary. Maybe there's different iterations of it. I don't know.
Now it's going to be $200 after this.
Oh yeah.
Well, getting back to the core of your story, the last thing that I saw before I read this really surprising, shocking news was that Mark is at NAMM talking, and everybody's talking about his new amp, and I'm like,
Yeah.
All right, go Mark, way to go! All right. You threw your lot in with John, and that sort of impish smile was back on his face, and I thought
He does that kind of that little half smile thing he does.
Yeah. And I thought, all right, let's see where this goes. And then a couple of months later, it's like, no, I must be reading this wrong, and I just, ugh.
Yeah, it really sucks.
But you said that there's other things behind that. Is that something that I don't want to get your powder wet if I'm speaking prematurely, so I'm not trying to be too specific.
No, it's fine. I'm far too open. I always, we did there's a 15-watt design that's finished that we'll be releasing at some point. He did a modification on our current Badcat that we're going to be releasing at some point, I think. And there's a KT88 hot cat. But it's tough because you got to be really careful that you don't come across as being opportunistic, and and I'm going out of my way to not do that, and I the funny thing was Mark and Ray said to me at the funeral, and this was touching, is he said, Mark said no to everybody for the last basically 8 years, and the fact that he said yes to you tells me something. And he had his and my agreement was verbal. It was a handshake. And when he passed, first thing I did is I got a hold of Carla and I said, this was our deal, and I'm going to put it in writing so that you have it, and I'm going to sign it and send it your way. And because there's a portion of everything we do that's going to her, obviously, because it's the same arrangement that I had with Mark. But it's a finite amount of stuff that's going to come out. You only did a few things. I wish there was more, because I was really fascinated. He was building. He was working for the Capitol Records Group for a long time, where he was fixing old Pultecs and U47s and stuff like that. And he was dabbling in mic pre's. He made a couple tube mic pre's that he said were really good. There's a lot of engineers in this world, and I work with a bunch of them. But he was just a person that I enjoyed his company, and I enjoyed talking about drag racing. In fact, when he was into drag racing too, and I grew up in a drag racing family. Kind of, there was one of my relatives used to drive a funny car back in the 70s called the LA Hooker. I've heard of this thing, and part of my family, it's the Mooneyham family. They make these blowers, those big blowers that go in the front of the dragsters and stuff. So I got to ride in the pickup truck that goes down the end of and tows it back, right, when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
So when he said, what do you want this thing to sound like? And I sent him a picture of Don Perdome's funny car from 1976 burning out, and I said, I want it to sound like that. That's what he goes. Message received. He understood exactly what I was talking about.
I love that.
I have saved all of his voicemails on my phone. I've got maybe like 20 of them here where he just calls me up.
Nice.
I've got 2 or 3 people that have been gone for a while now, and I cannot delete those. So I've got the text messages from when we were. This particular person was a dealer, and then they were more involved in the company, and then they went on and decided to do something else, and then they're back and going, I'm going to open up a little store, and I really want to do this. I'm really excited about it, and then boom. So, and I keep all that stuff. I can't not keep it.
No.
Every once in a while, I stumble across it, and I go, I am so glad that I kept that. My father was actually a stock car racer.
Was he really?
In 1950, 51, 52, around there.
Wow.
When we came on the scene, Mom was just like, okay, that'll be the end of that.
No more. You're done.
I've got pictures of my 2-year-older brother in a basket at the racetrack in Eastern Washington, in Ellensburg or something like that. And the companion picture is my dad in a 36 Ford Coupe airborne going over a split rail fence.
Oh my God.
That's
insane.
Bale of straw or something like that. And just like, that's all you see is the car up in the air going over a fence, a split rail fence. He had this really distinctive smile, and I just figured, yeah, he was smiling when he was going over that fence. He thought, yeah, Mom's going to love this. He's going to get it. He gets back to the.
I definitely want to die like my grandfather, peacefully in my sleep and not screaming like the passengers in his car, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. That was a bad joke. Sorry.
No. That was good. That was good.
I had to take that.
Hey, we have to have some clunkers, or it won't be a Malcontents show.
How long ago? This is the 5th season, really? You guys been doing this for a long time. 5 years? You've been doing...
I thought that we were going to run out of gas a long time ago, but we still.
I think we probably did run out of gas a long time ago, but here we are.
Yeah. Nobody's told you that. I mean,
yeah, right.
I don't think so.
That was just a bad joke.
No, we keep getting people to, well, first of all, we get a lot of, where's Nico-chan? And
oh, definitely. Is she around? Can she pop in for? She buzz by for 2 seconds?
I don't know. I think if I don't know if we could pull that up. Maybe. Well, we'll just throw it out there, and she may or may not appear. What I remember when we first talked, I picked up on something. Were you involved in a company that made transformers or inductors or something?
Yeah. I was the general manager of a company called Inductors Inc. And we did. I mean, obviously the smallest portion of the business was we sold some stuff to Mesa Boogie and Buddha and PV and people like that. But it was just a small little piece of the business. For the most part, it was OEM manufacturing and it's contract manufacturing. We sold. It was like maybe $20 million company, something like that. 75 employees. What's that? Oh, it's still around. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, in fact, I call over there now and again just to see how they're doing. Say, suffering without me, I see. But no, they're doing great. And I knew I had to leave. This is what I wanted to do. I mean, this is absolutely what I wanted to do. And I, it's maybe the dumbest thing I've ever done, but it's certainly the most fulfilling. It really is. And that, Stevie, that just being involved in music and sing and creating tools that people that are far better players than either one of us can utilize to make really cool things happen. And it's something special.
Yeah. Our transformers, one of our main, and we have several, but one of our main transformer suppliers had an engineer that was really, the current guy is really good.
Yeah.
But the original guy that I dealt with, who was a partner in the company, who passed away about, I want to say 20, 25 years ago, just suddenly, he was like 50, just suddenly the sales manager called me up and go, "He's gone," and I'm like, "Oh my god,
That
this
sucks.
guy!" I could just be myself with him. I didn't have to be like, I didn't have to do engineering speak, and send him equations. I would just rattle off thoughts and send him like, and I've got all of the faxes and all of the emails and all of the handwritten communications between us about all the crazy stuff that we were working on. And he would just, I would just send him something scratched out on a napkin, and a week later a sample would arrive, and it was just like he reached inside my head and pulled it out and said, "Is this what you're looking for?"
Yeah.
And every time I thought I had lost a really key asset when that happened. And that's
Transformers are funny. It's like that gas station story where you go in and the guy turns the screw, right? And he said it's $100, and he's like, it's $1 to turn the screw and 99 to know which one to turn, right?
Yeah,
Transformers are exactly that, because I can tell you from 20 years experience that I don't care what guitar amplifier transformer you point me to, there's $8 worth of parts in that thing, maybe 12 if it's a really expensive one, because it's the EI core, it's EI laminates, M6s, and you got the wire and then the bobbins, the Cosmo bobbins, or you can use paper bobbins, and how you wind them is key. But once you know the formula, like how to put them together, that's where the money is, right? Is knowing how to do that. But once you do that, they're not nearly as expensive as people think they are. Like they're not, they charge a lot for them because they're expensive to ship, and
right.
they're making them is really messy, because when you vacuum impregnate them, there's varnish all over the place, and you got California breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, I've had so much experience with that I would, first thing we did is I know all the really good ones, and just said, design us a transformer set, and we use them, and they don't cost me as much because I get them made in bulk, and I get them wound by guys that know what they're doing, and that give me an advantage for sure. And but if you ever need, I can steer you in the direction if it's at all interesting to you. I could show you some guys.
I'm all about backup 3 or 4
suppliers, right? Especially now, right? With all this crap going on.
Well, I've always had the sort of mantra that I want my vendors within choking distance. And I think you know what I mean.
Yes.
You would especially know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the farther away they get from you,
you can't choke them.
You can't choke them. You can't, the harder it is to corner them and give them a Jake shampoo because they really loused it up. But you want to, and it's almost like it's a good thing that they're not that close sometimes, because I would be in jail for, multiple homicides by now. But it's just, it's the communication style. It's like a relationship. It's like a person that you live with the rest of your life, and you have to figure out how to listen to them and how to talk to them, and what, they could be. I could say something that I think is the most rudimentary plain English possible, and I get back somebody that's speaking in Greek saying, "You mean no, just a number 6 screw with a nut and an external tooth lock washer with an enamel or with a nylon insulator inside."
Pretty simple stuff.
I just want that. And I was working on an output transformer that I wanted to have. I wanted to have an air gap in it. It was not a single-ended design, but I wanted to have an air gap in it because I was experimenting with something. And I told the guy, okay, I want the air gap, and I want to experiment with the air gap. And that means that I need you to send me the transformer without the laminations, varnished. And I want half a millimeter, 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter, and 2 millimeter lamination, or the shims,
Yeah.
the little insulated. That's the same paper they use on voice coils, that heat impregnated paper. I need that so that I can change them.
Yeah.
And I get the transformer. It's all varnished together.
Strike 3.
There's no extra laminate. There's no extra shims in there.
Ugh.
And I call them up and I go, here's the email that I sent you. Could you please read it? Yeah, I read it. I said, okay, here's what I got. Here's a picture of it. All right. Yeah, we'll send you another one this week. And then I get that one. It's all taken apart, and it still only has the 0.5 millimeter shim with it. I was like, what about the rest of the shims? It took for like 4 shipments to get all the pieces. And that's if I had been able to just get in the car and go down there and just say, I want one of these, and I want one of these, and one of these, and I want you to do it like this, and I'll wait, I would have gotten it,
Right.
To get on a plane or take a long drive and then get a face-to-face conversation with somebody, because you have to do that like 3 or 4 times a year, just meet people face to face. They think they remember who they're talking to, and then you realize that neither one of you remember who you're really talking to. So if you're not talking constantly every day, then if it's once a month, everybody's doing so much stuff that you need these refreshers. And that's why I always said I need my vendors within choking distance so I can do these things. But at the end of the day, when the industry is going through the changes that it's going through, you get it from where you can get it from. And that's not always that convenient. And it makes things, you have to be much more specific with emails and drawings and blah, 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 blah. And to me, that's just, it's a bummer. I have to do it. It's more, I have to discipline myself to do that. But it's a whole lot more fun and productive when workflow just allows me to go, I need this and this and this and this. Did you get all that? Yeah, I got it. And then it shows up and they got it.
And off you go, yeah.
And off you go. Fantastic. So when I get a supplier like that, I use that supplier until every single person at the company dies off. And
I spent the first 10 years I've been at Badcat now for, I don't know, 13, 14 years, I think. 14 years. The first 10, I think I was weeding out suppliers. I think it's, if I look at that 10-year stretch of time, that's probably what I did the most of. Is weeding out suppliers. I think I've got it down now. I've got a great group of people I work with. And if I'm on the phone with the vendor, something has gone seriously freaking wrong. Yeah. So I don't. If they're hearing from me, they know the shit is about to hit the fan. But generally speaking, I haven't had much of that lately. Thank God.
Yeah. Right.
Well, hey, a couple things here. Number one, here is Nico-chan.
Oh Jesus! My God, what the hell is that? That's awesome. That is fantastic. That is fantastic.
And
didn't stop to say hi, just split.
Just a little drive-by, fly-by.
Yeah, little fly-by this time. Probably the next episode, we're probably gonna. Next episode, we're gonna have to do a poll because I'm really into sumo wrestling.
Nice.
And she being Japanese, and and the next sumo tournament starts in May. So any of our pals out there that are into sumo, give us a comment that you would be interested to know something about the cultural background of sumo and what's going on with it, and some links to see some really great sumo tournaments. And we need
to do it anyway. We just need to
do it. I want to do it.
And
because I love
Trug's
to
being
talk about it, and I'm learning a lot about it, and it like there are a lot of there's just a lot of life lessons out of that when you really get into it, you go, wow, this is really a thing.
save that for the
Oh,
sumo
I will.
episode. We have to do that.
I'm
Yeah.
you
Trug's
Nice.
being salty about my Dodgers hat. I see you, Trug. And you know what? I'm actually gonna go. I'm assuming you're a Yankees guy. I'm actually gonna catch the Yankees at Dodger Stadium at the end of next month. That's gonna be pretty great. But anyway, we have a question for John.
Yeah, I want to know this too, actually.
Yeah. Hey, can you speak about those Badcat rack preamps?
Yes.
Download.
I'm wondering if this guy has a camera in my shop. Just like, and that's all I'll say.
Oh, excellent.
But yeah, there were a couple of them that were built. I think there were like 2 or 3 that were built back around 06, 05 or something like that. They were. If you look inside them, you think, oh my God, what the hell? It's
right.
point to point hand wired. There's no sense in doing that. I mean, let's be
Right.
honest. I mean, but yeah, we have definitely looked at. Like I said, I've been obsessed in the last 8 months over getting a really good guitar send into a DAW, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is certainly one way to get it done. But there's
Torin needs a 41st preamp, so he's like all in.
Nice. Nice. But yes, there are plans to do something like that.
Okay, all right,
Absolutely.
very cool,
Yes.
very cool.
Awesome.
Well, we're passing the 2 hour mark, so we're about ready to get off.
Do we have one more interesting question that we could throw down, or are we pretty much?
I think 121st. Michael's correcting you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right.
And I'm an Angels fan, by the way. So yes, the Dodgers fan is painful to look at.
Oh yeah.
I grew up in Orange County.
Yeah.
I'm not a hater, though. I'm not a hater.
You know, I mainly grew up in Colorado, and at the time we didn't have a baseball team. It was the Denver Bears, so I didn't have a strong allegiance. And but I'm a Nuggets and Broncos fan, big time. So when I moved here 16 years ago, I had room in my roster for a baseball team, and I live in Echo Park, and Dodger Stadium is within walking distance, so I'm there a lot. And so that's my one local team. And having been a Nuggets fan my entire life,
ouch,
I know what it's like to be, I mean, you know, finally won a championship 2 years ago, but like, I understand why people hate the Dodgers. I understand.
You don't choose to be an Angels fan. You grow up, sentenced to be an Angels fan. And I grew up an Angels fan in Orange County, and we lost 5-0 today. I mean, just same old stuff. I'm used to it.
Yeah,
but I'm used to it. I still love my team.
Yeah, well, you got to. It's like being a Browns fan or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
All right, are we there?
Yeah, I think
Guys,
so.
Did we reach the runway?
I think so.
I just want to thank you two for having me on. I feel really unworthy to be here, but I'll take it.
Bullshit. Nice. You're awesome, man. That was really fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you have to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that we were gonna have a blast, and I figured that we probably had some more things to talk about going forward. And as you get ready to spring some more surprises on us, you're welcome back to wail about it. And I'm just stalling for another couple of minutes because Joe's getting ready to push the button.
Oh, is this more Godzilla? Bring it.
No. I think this is tacos
this is for the Nico-chan fans out there.
Oh my God!
Hello, Nico-chan.
All right.
Beautiful. That's fantastic.
I've been cooking all day today.
Are you drunk?
No, I'm not. I'm going to.
What is wrong with you, Nico-chan? That's not your normal thing.
What kind of honey delights are you cooking?
Honey delight. Well, I'm getting bigger than ever, so I have to lose weight.
Ah.
So I've been making a diet cookie.
Diet cookies.
Yeah. With
There's
Oh,
no such
diet
thing. There's
cookies.
no such thing.
yeah.
Don't eat it. That's a diet cookie.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. And then cut down the alcohol too.
But that's crazy talk. That's crazy talk.
Says the guy who was drinking vitamin water all night.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, sincerely, guys, thank you for having me on. I appreciate that very much, and I'm looking forward to getting to know both of you a lot better. And
Likewise.
All right.
Big
Well,
admirer.
I'll call you the next time I get arrested. Then.
Speaking of it, I'll leave you with one last story. So there's a story I'll tell maybe if I come on again. Mark Sampson bought a mini bike motorcycle
Mm-hmm.
from Howard Dumble,
Oh,
I love this already. All right.
which
Oh.
landed him in jail because it turned out to be stolen.
no!
Dumble didn't know it was stolen, but he bought it from somebody who stole it.
Oh.
Stole it out
Mark-
of the crystal lattice.
Mark went to register, pulling it from the crystal lattice. Steve, tell us about the crystal lattice, because I've been wondering what the hell that is. I've been reading books about this crap, and I don't know what the hell that is. I think Double's full of
That's
shit.
another 30 minutes. We'll come back to that.
All
Oh
That'll
right.
my
be an excuse
God.
to drag you back out of your cave.
I
Yeah.
would love to come on again. Thank
Okay.
you so much, you guys.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
it very
you.
much.
Everybody.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody, for
guys.
hanging out with us. Appreciate it. Thank you, Joe.
Absolutely. All right. See
Take care,
y'all
guys.
soon. All right. Good night.
Good night, guys.